As we move into this subject of service systems, or consistently delivering extraordinary service, it's very important that we remember the transformational concepts that we've learned so far in this course. Number one, the only sure way to success in any Homefront service business is by consistently developing cheerleader customers. Our second transformational concept. A cheerleader is created when we dramatically exceed our customers' expectations. Number three, over 80% of the customer's perception of value is based on their relationship with the person doing the work. Number four, customers' opinions about both the company and the person doing the work in their home are based upon moments of truth. And these moments of truth are any time the customer or a potential customer comes in contact with your company and forms an opinion. During a typical job with your customer, there may be hundreds of moments of truth, and these moments of truth may be either negative or positive. So in just one day, your business may face thousands of moments of truth. And finally, we learned one more transformational concept on side number 8. We organize these moments of truth an average customer will encounter in our business by charting the moments of truth out on a service circle. And a service circle is the path or route a customer takes through our company. Service circles are proactive. They allow us to anticipate moments of truth and build systems to manage the customer's experience. Now, did you hear that last point? Service circles help us to build systems to manage the customer's experience with our company. And that's what we're going to discuss in this message, Service Systems. Service systems are where we get hands-on. We get down and dirty with this idea of service engineering, managing the customer's opinion about the quality of our work. Service systems are what bring moments of truth and service circles down to earth. Now, if you've been with me this long, you know that nothing else really matters in your business except making cheerleaders. And when we strip away all the fancy words and the organization charts, all the necessary bureaucracy that any business builds up over time, cheerleaders are created when we work in the customer's home. And who's going to do it? Our frontline workers, usually the least appreciated part of our organization. Our customer, see, doesn't know or care about our flashy new computer system or our new line of credit or the fact that we're opening a new branch office next week. The homeowner, our customer's ultimate satisfaction with our company is only based on their relationship with the person or persons performing a service in their home. So the question that we now have is, how do we control and guide that relationship when we're in people's homes all over the city, spread out with hundreds or even thousands of moments of truth happening in different places all over our market area? How do we do this? Well, here's the answer. We control and guide our employees' relationships with our customers through service systems. And a service system is a framework, a mental outline, a structure where you actually take a typical service call and break it down into routine, normal steps that employees can feel comfortable with and allow your people to control the situation. Yes, I'm describing a script built around the emotions of the customer. And service systems are what I call a triple win. A win-win-win situation for your customer, for your employees, and for you as a business manager. Customers win because this service system calms them down and reassures them that, yes, they did make a wise buying decision. They hired a good company, and they can trust these people working in their home. Now, employees win with a service system because their job is made a lot easier. You see, most employees love order and routine, a safe and sane work environment. And that's what makes them employees as opposed to entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs feel comfortable with chaos and disorder in their daily life. Well, that's not an employee. An employee has a comfort level that wants to be in a routine, habit-type situation. Employees are right now finding this comfortable routine in the technical part of their work because it's so predictable. But what's the unpredictable part of any Homefront worker's day? It's dealing with the customer. And consequently, many frontline workers on the Homefront ignore or they deal with the homeowner as little as possible. And why is that? Because the employee doesn't feel comfortable communicating with and building a relationship with the homeowner. And yet we have learned that 80% of how the customer decides if this employee is doing a good job is based on just this relationship that many of our employees are ignoring. So do you see now why the level of customer satisfaction is so low in Homefront type companies? It's because service employees and homeowners are living in two different worlds. They're not relating. Now, I'm sure you have had or possibly have employees who are both good technically and also excel at building relationships with the customer. But how many of your employees have been able to do great at both? You see, most individuals that will work for you during your business career will be incapable of naturally, easily dealing with your customers. It's generally an extraordinary person that can do both. And it's very short-sighted to base an entire company, an entire business, upon having all extraordinary employees. Why? Well, first of all, there's not that many extraordinary people out there. And second, if these people are extraordinary, well, they're not going to work for us very long. Instead, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be starting their own business, or maybe going to work for our competitor. So what we need for success in the Homefront industry is extraordinary results from ordinary people. And the way we win with service systems as business managers is to get extraordinary customer service from good but average employees. As I've mentioned, this service system is a structured routine, a framework that guides the critical points in the interaction between customers and employees. You see, great service always begins with systems. Now, when we normally read of what I call service heroes in the press, or we hear of them on business shows, normally we find these heroic employees are performing prodigious feats of customer service. But what they're usually doing, if you look behind the scenes, they're normally bailing out their company from a service failure with a certain customer. And this is usually a company without a good system, without an understanding of the service circle, so consequently their service circle they don't even know they have is always breaking down in these various moments of truth. Now, certainly it's good that these employees have bought into customer service enough that they're willing to perform these wonderful feats of customer service. But see, these problems, these service failures should not have occurred in the first place. Or to paraphrase an old song favorite of mine, good service should mean never having to say you're sorry, never having to recover from a problem in the first place. Now, the way we never, or realistically I should say seldom, have to say we're sorry is with service systems. And you'll find these service systems allow employees, instead of mentally panicking out there, instead of wasting huge amounts of mental and emotional energy asking themselves constantly, what do I do next? Well, instead, it allows them to already know what to do and to be creatures of habit when they deal with the customer. And then your employees can take their creative emotional energy and focus on what's really important, building a relationship and pleasing the customer in these moments of truth. Now, in my customer service seminars, I usually run into several different objections here. So let me anticipate them with you and answer them in order. Now, of course, the first objection I run into, typically from a large and burly frontline employee who has a certain amount of pugnaciousness and truculence in his voice, a big chip on his shoulder, he says, "I just can't work to any script. I'm no robot. I just gotta be me." Well, the way I answer this, and very respectfully I might add, because this is usually a large individual, is that, first of all, a service system isn't a script where you're very confined, you're hemmed in, and you're speaking with little memorized bits of routine. Instead, a service system is a framework. It's an outline, a mental checklist of all the items that you need to touch on. And it's designed around the mental comfort of the customer, because we realize now, with what we've talked about already in this course, the emotional problems the customer is having with us in their home. And we're answering these unique emotional dynamics without having to answer them directly, but instead through our actions and our attitudes. And what this does is it allows you to be you much more of the time. Let me take the example of a stage play. Now, during a stage play, many times in the review of it, the reviewer will mention how the actor, the star of the play, took this part and showed enormous creativity. This star had a great deal of intuition on this character, and he expanded on it, and the reviewer appreciated it very much. But let me ask you, was that star of the play constantly ad-libbing, changing the entire format and structure of the play? I don't care how gifted and creative an actor is, no director is going to allow them to just stick a new scene into the middle of the play in the middle of the production. It won't happen. Why? Because that's going to wind up surprising and confusing the other actors, and it's going to create total chaos for the audience. You see, all great stage actors and actresses follow the script. That has to be done. And yet within the framework of this script, well, this actor is able to become a star. And in the same way, our employees are allowed to show tremendous creativity in dealing with the customer, but within the framework of this service system. And if the employee comes up with some ideas to improve the script, that's wonderful. No problem. But it's got to have the approval of the director, and that's you. Now, the second objection raised to service systems is that employees won't remember everything in this script. And you're right, your employees won't remember everything. But even if employees start out only doing 50% of the script, it's probably 100% more positive customer service moments of truth than they're doing now. And then you can work with them to remember more. The third objection to service systems, and really it's an objection to this entire concept of service engineering, is that these systems are manipulative. And on this point, I have to plead guilty. Service engineering truly does manipulate the emotions of your customer. You are controlling the situation. But let me defend this concept by saying it's for a good cause. Service engineering should never, ever be used in a shallow, manipulative manner to fool the customer into thinking they got a good job when your employees really delivered a bad job. That is wrong, it's immoral, it's unethical. But you see, good quality work and service engineering go hand in hand. Service systems just allow your employees to get the appreciation they deserve anyway. And even better, service systems help your customer to have good, positive, content feelings instead of that negative, heartsick feeling of getting ripped off. And my feeling is that if you can make the customer feel good, if you can make the customer feel great, not by changing the quality of your work because you already do good work, but you make the customer feel great by the manner in which your employees perform the work, well, I think that all of us have a moral obligation to do that. Now, the fourth objection I receive, and this is normally from the owner or the manager of a Homefront type business, normally from someone who's owned a business a long time. And they'll say, "My employees already do that customer service stuff. I don't need this service system." Well, a famous author named Gore Vidal once said, "It's par for the course trying to fool the people, but it's downright dangerous when you start fooling yourself." And I would submit to you that if you say and feel that your employees are doing all this customer-pleasing stuff that we've all talked about up till now, if you feel they're using these concepts in their day-to-day transactions with the customers without your constantly training and reinforcing them, you're fooling yourself. You see, if we haven't given our employees these concepts of the perception of value, the service circle, the 5 different classes of customers, and this obsession with service to an individual, this idea of an internal versus external way of doing business, well, I'll promise you they're not born with it. And I'll guarantee you they didn't learn it before they came to you from another company, because nobody else in the industry is doing these things. Now, certainly, I'm sure that you, as an owner or as a manager, have always cared about service. That's your job. You're the boss. You've bought into this idea of this obsession. You did it naturally, instinctively. That's why you are where you are. But please, don't fool yourself. Your employees haven't bought in. Don't assume that your employees have basic social skills, such as introducing ourselves. I promise you, many of your employees don't do it, and especially younger ones today. You see, with the dramatic breakdown in families, the breakdown in what used to be common courtesy, and I call it uncommon courtesy now, with the social values that many of your entry-level workers have grown up with, they're not doing it. They don't know how. And consequently, your employees are having tremendous problems relating to the older customers that probably form the base of your clients. So please, don't take it for granted. Don't assume that your employees are following simple social skills. They may not, and that's why we need service systems. And in addition, even if at some point in the past you have trained your employees in these concepts, I'm willing to bet that in the intervening time, no doubt the constant struggle of the important versus the urgent has crowded out this important idea of constantly preaching and inculcating this and training and retraining in your older employees. You see, in a textbook case of entropy, everything runs downhill, including the actions of your employees. If you haven't constantly reminded and encouraged and checked on your employees following these concepts, then it's probably not happening in your customers' homes. Now, the final objection I hear to service systems is, well, what happens if the customer doesn't stick to the script? Well, that's a good point, because we can't anticipate everything. We can't script every single moment of truth out there on the home front. But I will tell you that you'll be amazed at how often you can anticipate every single thing that happens with an average customer, but not always. And as the bumper sticker says, poo-poo happens. So in addition to systems, we also need to focus on developing a company culture of customer service. We need to train all of our employees in the concepts that we've been talking about. And you as a leader need to personally embody this obsession with your customer in your own actions, your own behaviors, and your attitude. And then your company procedures need to change to become an external company. The Bible put it beautifully when it stated, "You can't produce good fruit from a rotten tree." And in the same way, if the core of our company isn't focused on and built around the needs of the customer, we can't expect our employees to buy into this customer service either. It won't happen. Now, on the other hand, with a little bit of education and support, you'll be amazed at how even uneducated and unsophisticated frontline employees will buy in to customer service. You see, as your company changes, and then you combine it with this essential component of training, it will do wonders for your employees' attitude and their morale. And you see, training is essential, whether you hire a trainer to come into your company or if you use some of the programs available to change your employees' perceptions toward customers, such as my companion series to this program, which is designed for frontline employees called Winning on the Homefront. And if you've trained your employees in this culture of customer service, what happens when the client doesn't stick to the service script? Well, the employee just does the best they can. And my promise to you is that you'll be amazed at how well they can do. So give your people the tools, the concepts, and the values of customer service, and most of the time they'll do the right thing. So I hope I've answered any possible objections to implementing a service system in your company. Service systems do work, and they're working beautifully right now in thousands of Homefront businesses. So now we need to ask, what do we need in our service system? The first and most important point is that service systems should make it easier for our employees to do it right than to do it wrong. Most people that work for you want to do a good job. But you see, too often our systems are too hard, they're too complicated, and they're not clearly communicated. So keep your service systems simple. Along with simple, they also need to be easy. They need to flow, and they need to make sense to our employees. You see, if something is hard to do, if we come up with systems that are hard, that are difficult, and that basically don't make sense to our people, well, you know what will happen? Our employees will fight us through inertia. Now, they won't come up to us and say, "Boss, I don't like this. It just doesn't make sense to me." Because, see, usually your people aren't going to have the courage or the insight to do that. But your workers will fight service engineering through inertia and apathy if they don't understand them. So anytime that's happening, when you see that all of your employees are resisting through inertia a procedure you're trying to implement, go back and analyze what the problem is. And anytime you're having customer service problems with your employees, it's only one of two things. Either you have got bad employees or you have a bad system. And typically, if every one of your employees is resisting you, well, chances are you don't have 100% bad employees. It's likely they just haven't had these changes make sense to them. It may not be an easy, simple system, and you haven't sold them on it yet. So, what do you need to do? Take that complicated system and simplify it and clearly communicate the benefits. Now, I mentioned the phrase clearly communicate. Well, how do we do that? We put it in writing. And you see, nobody likes to put things down in writing. And you know why? Because it's hard work. But here's the advantage. If we have to write a system down, it forces us to be specific, to think, and to think hard. Writing it down helps us to keep it simple. Because you see, when a complicated system is staring up at us on paper, it becomes obvious. So please, write down your service systems. If a procedure is kept in your head, you don't have a service system, and likely you don't own a business, you just own a job. Point number 2 on service systems is so obvious that sometimes we overlook it. Pick your battles. Don't nitpick your employees in these service changes. Home in on the really crucial things that you insist on in these interactions, the moments of truth that are critical between the employee and the customer. Make sure they're really important, and then make these moments of truth absolutely non-negotiable. How do we do this? Well, we could say something like this. Sam, I'm sorry to nag you, but this procedure has absolutely got to happen. I've explained why to you. I've explained why this moment of truth is so important. Now, if you won't play ball, you're going to get kicked off the team. Now, most service systems need to be so simple that they should be printed on just one page. And service systems will need to be modified depending on the services you perform, the type of customer you're serving, maybe even your locale in the country and local customs. But systems should always focus on the emotions of the customer, not on the technical part of the work your people are doing. After all, I'm assuming your people already are competent in their technical work. Where your employees likely are falling down is in their dealings and their relationships with the customer. So a service system, above all, needs to be simple and easy for employees to pick up on. And the way we do that is by picking our battles and then making the important stuff non-negotiable. The third point that I'd like to make in a service system is assume nothing. It's absolutely amazing what your frontline people don't know. Let me give you an example of this that happened during my scripting of this program. We were on a trip back from Alaska, and I work real well in the car while my long-suffering wife drives down the freeway. So I'm jotting down notes, making different insights to myself, and we pull into an Arby's for a quick bite. I go up to the counter, and I'm here to tell you that Arby's is no doubt a good service company. No doubt they have all sorts of manuals and systems on training their employees. And this nice young man at the counter, clean cut, had a smile on his face. He comes up to the counter to me. And remember, I'm sure that Arby's has trained him on front counter procedures to the point where the first thing these systems say is greet the customer. Now, these trainers at Arby's probably thought that everybody knows how to greet a customer. So what does this young man say to me at the front counter? He smiled and he says, "What do you need?" Now, you see, in this young man's mind, "What do you need?" was a totally acceptable way to greet a customer. Now, in our minds, obviously, and no doubt in the trainers' minds at Arby's, that's a totally unacceptable way to greet a customer. So what I'm suggesting here is assume nothing in a service system. Train your employees in all of these fine little details that it's so easy for us just to assume our people know how to do. For example, good morning, welcome to Arby's. How may I help you? You see how much nicer that would have been? Now, in my companion series for your employees, I especially stress that you include your name in your greeting before you enter a customer's home. Now, we assume that all of our employees do that because we do that. But again, I promise you, don't fool yourself. If your employees haven't been told, they may not be doing it. Let me give you another example of assuming nothing. Now, we know, and I would hope that our employees know, that we don't smoke in customers' homes. But you see, even as little as 10 or 15 years ago, it was acceptable to ask people if they minded if you smoked. And you see, no doubt many of your older employees especially are asking your customers right now, putting your customers under emotional pressure by saying, "Do you mind if I smoke in your home?" Well, I would submit to you that in today's modern climate, people are going to be very offended if we put them under the emotional stress of asking if we can smoke in their home, and then they have to say, "No, I'd rather you didn't." Now, you see, an external type company is going to have as part of their service system that, no, we do not ask people to smoke in their home. Now, see, we as managers, we know that instinctively. But have we told our employees that? Assume nothing. I'm reminded of a very good, hardworking employee I had some years ago. And of course, being an external type customer service company, all of our employees knew that we absolutely did not smoke in customers' homes. Well, When I called the lady after we'd worked in her home to do a quality check, I could sense that something was wrong because she said, "Well, yes, everything was okay." But I kind of sensed a restraint in her voice. So I did a little gentle probing, and finally it came out that this lady was what we called a discriminating client with an immaculate home. And she said, "Well, your employee was very nice, but I sure wish he hadn't smoked in my home." Well, I was flabbergasted. I put my detective hat on, and I went out to track down where the moments of truth had failed in the service circle. And sure enough, when I confronted my employee, James said, "Well, yeah, I waited until she left, and then I went into the bathroom, and I turned the fan on, and I had a quick smoke because I knew the fan would take all the smoke and the odor right out of the house." Well, you see, for the non-smokers among us, we know that that's not enough. But you see, I assumed too much. So how did we handle this? At our next company meeting, we covered every part of not smoking in the customer's home. And then we added in our service system specific points to cover about not smoking, including not going in the bathroom and turning the fan on. So assume nothing. Let's review our first 3 priorities in building service systems. First, make it easier for your employees to do it right than to do it wrong. Keep it simple and put it in writing. If it's not in writing, it's not a system, it's just a vague idea in your head. Second, pick your battles. If it's not essential to making cheerleaders, don't jump on your employees about it. I know for years my office staff was always on me to nail my frontline employees about their handwriting. And they were right, our technicians' handwriting wasn't good. And in a perfect world, it would be nice to have employees that were both focused on making cheerleaders and they were turning in picture-perfect production reports. But you see, we don't live in a perfect world, and so which point was more important to me? I wanted people that could make cheerleaders. So pick your battles, don't nitpick your people. Our third priority with service systems, assume nothing. Just because you automatically behave a certain way in a customer's home, don't assume that all of your employees do. Script out even basic points, such as how to introduce yourself, and never, ever ask to smoke in a customer's home. My final point on service systems is that they encourage consistency. You see, one of the things that customers crave in their life, and particularly with services, and especially with services that are performed on the home front, is to have consistency with any company. A point that I hit much more strongly in my program for training your employees in this concept is that customers are watching us much more than we think when we're in the home. And customers will make decisions on quality based on the darndest things. Jan Carlson probably said it best when he stated about his airline passengers, "When our customers see coffee rings on their flip-down trays, in their mind it means we aren't maintaining our jet engines properly." You see, we are very truly on stage all the time. We can take 2 employees at different times doing the exact same procedure, but if they do it slightly differently in front of the customer, well, the customer is very eager to attribute wrong motives to that difference. And they might think of the second employee, "Well, what's wrong? I'm not getting the same level of service. He's doing it differently than the first guy did." Now, you see, in addition, by having this consistency of service in our framework, it helps to avoid our customers falling in love with a certain employee. Now, you see, that's a two-edged sword. And it's wonderful that our employee has made a cheerleader out of that customer. That's great. But you see, we don't want a personality cult developing in our business between one employee and his customers. You see, that's real bad because what can happen to that employee? He can get hit by a truck, he can get sick, he can quit, and he can even ultimately go to work for a competitor of ours. And if a customer feels like that is the only employee in our organization that can give us superb, consistent service, well, it's a very dangerous position for a manager to be in. But if all of our employees have bought into these concepts, and if all of our employees follow a service system, well, then that customer isn't in love with your employee. He's in love with your company and the consistently superb service that they know they'll get from all of your workers. And they don't care who comes to the home as long as it's someone from your company. Now, this is just an aside to you on this idea. Sometimes we'll find ourselves saying, "You'll like Dave. He's one of our better technicians." Or maybe, "He's our best technician." Well, what's that immediately say to your customer? You've got bad technicians? Or, now I've got to remember to ask for Dave from now on. So instead, let me suggest to you, promote the idea of all of your frontline employees as being interchangeable. They're all great because they're all part of your company, and your company gives great service. Now, consistency is very hard to achieve, especially in a service industry. But I'm here to tell you, consistency is essential to develop in your business. Why? Because customers prize consistency even over having a superstar one time and then a slightly lower type of service the next. An example of a company who took consistency to new heights and really benefited from it is McDonald's. Now think with me about McDonald's. You probably have one in your community. After all, there's over 10,000 of them around the world. Now, why is there 10,000 McDonald's around the world? Why is it they've been such a wonderful example of business success? Now, see, if you think about it, you're going to realize that no doubt in your community you have a favorite hamburger stand, some little mom and pop place that serves up the very best burger you've ever tasted, and no doubt much better than McDonald's. And McDonald's will even agree with you on that. So what's been the key for McDonald's? Well, their main key has been that the founder of McDonald's, Ray Kroc, managed to introduce consistency into making fast food. And you see, no matter where you go, whether it's Tokyo, downtown Manhattan, Los Angeles, or Tucumcari, New Mexico, you're going to walk into a McDonald's and find a consistently good, not a great, but a consistently good, hot, solid hamburger served in a reasonably clean setting and delivered with consistently good, smiling service at a consistent price. So what do you want? You're hungry? You want a consistently good meal? You go to McDonald's. Now, when we try to implement consistency in our company, there are 3 ways in which a service system, a mental framework or outline can help. Point number 1. Well, it's important to realize that not all of our people are rocket scientists. They just aren't. They're good, solid people, but they're not extraordinary. Because remember that our challenge is to produce extraordinary service results with ordinary people, and a service system allows us to consistently do this with average employees. The second point, even exceptional people have what I call down days. Some people call it their biorhythms are off. Some just say, "I don't feel like coming into work today." But you see, with a framework, with a structure to kind of keep us trudging through that day, we still can give the customer quality, exceptional service. And think about it. Don't each one of your customers deserve the very best? Now, I challenge you. Next time one of your service systems breaks down and you have a bad moment of truth and a complaint in the service circle, when you call that unhappy customer, try saying this to them. "Well, gosh, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry. Dan's biorhythms were off that day." Or maybe, "Well, Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry. Susan was just having a bad hair day. You see, that's not going to get you very far with your client, is it? But a service system allows your employee, even when they're a little down, they've got some home problems, they've got problems with their mental condition that day, they're still able to render a good quality level of perceived service to the homeowner. And third, well, think about it. All of us really work better within a framework. You remember the saying, we're all creatures of habit? And we are, every one of us. And our employees, I promise you, have already developed habits of their own in dealing with the customer. Some of these might be good habits, and you need to implement them into your service system. But here's the problem. I promise you that many of these habits that your employees have come up with are bad. They're not aware of it, but many of your employees' procedures that they've set up for themselves to follow are walking all over the feelings of your customers. But what a service system will do is force you to set up good habits that allow you to guide and control the interaction of your employees with the customers, so you wind up developing cheerleaders. In our last message, we learned about service systems, which are a framework or script built around the emotions of the customer. Service systems function as a mental outline to help you control and guide the relationship between your frontline employees and your customer. If you implement these service systems, you'll find that your callbacks will decrease, your sales will rise, and you'll make a lot more cheerleaders. Another benefit of these scripted out systems is our employees will be less stressed out and have more energy. Why? Because with a service system or script guiding the relationship, your workers will feel in control when they deal with customers. Service systems function for our workers like a stage play script does for a great actor. The script gives structure to the play, but it allows the star great creativity in how it's interpreted. This service system script allows our employees to deal properly with our customer even when they're having kind of a rotten, down-at-the-mouth, bad hair day. We examined 5 goals of service systems in our previous message. First, a service system makes it easier for the employee to do it right than to do it wrong. All too often, our systems are too complicated, or even worse, reside only in the head of the manager or the owner. And that leads us to our second priority. Service systems must be clearly communicated in writing. Nobody likes writing it down because it forces us to think and actually organize a system. I'm like most entrepreneurs. I don't like to live by anybody's rules, even rules and systems that I've set up. And yet all of us know that when we write down service systems, we're committing ourselves to rules that even the boss has to follow. And since none of us like that as managers or owners, we put it off. But putting down all of your systems in writing creates a real business that will run smoother while you own it and be worth a lot more if and when you decide to sell your business. Third point on service systems, pick your battles. Focus your energies on getting your employees to focus their energy on making cheerleaders. If you're consistently creating cheerleaders with service systems, everything else sort of takes care of itself. So don't nitpick your staff. Determine what is really important. And then make those customer service steps non-negotiable. My fourth suggestion on building service systems is assume nothing. Never make the mistake that just because you behave in a certain manner, that your employees will do so also. It's amazing to me how few Homefront services have given their people even one simple guideline on how to meet the customer. Too much of the time we just assume our employees know what to do, and many times they don't. And finally, service systems help our employees and our company to be consistent. And consistency is the magic word to success in a Homefront business. If your business isn't consistent, your customers will always assume you've changed your procedures, not to improve the job, but instead to cheat them or to get away with crummy work. If we have consistent service systems, even our average, ordinary employees will provide extraordinary service, even when they don't feel on top of the world. All of us are creatures of habit, so service systems just make our job a lot easier. These systems also allow us to replace employees easily when we have to, because their entire job is laid out in writing, step by step, making the training process much easier. And if it's easy to replace someone, we won't be afraid to let a marginal employee go when their time is up. You see, there's no worse fate for a manager than to be held hostage emotionally by an employee. Of course, service systems are built not around how to do the job efficiently, even though obviously that's important, but instead, a service system is built around the emotions of your customer. Now, how do we do this? By learning yet another transformational concept. Here it is. We build service systems by answering the customer's unspoken questions with unspoken answers. Did you get that point? We must always answer the customer's unspoken questions with unspoken answers. Let's examine this concept closer. Do you think your customer has questions when you or your workers come into their home? Of course they do. They probably ask you questions such as, how long will the job take? Do you guarantee your work? Are you insured and bonded? Do you have any references I can call? And of course, you're always asked the ever-popular, how much do you charge? But you see, these are all spoken, verbal questions. And of course, they are important. Well, that's easy, you say. That's easy to answer. Answer them courteously, answer them honestly, and let's get started on the job. But I'm here to tell you, it's not that simple on the home front. You see, do you think these spoken, verbal questions are the only questions a customer has when we work in their home? For example, have you ever had anyone verbally ask you, "Are you an idiot?" I doubt it. I doubt very much if anyone has ever verbally asked you that. But do you think your first-time customer is silently asking this question in their mind? I guarantee it. I guarantee that they're quietly checking you and your employees out to answer this burning question in their mind, have I let a bunch of idiots into my home? Or have you or your employees ever had clients verbally ask you questions like, will you take good care of my precious home and belongings? Or has anyone ever asked you out loud, do you have any idea what you're doing? Or how about, will you lie to me and cheat me? Or has anyone ever asked you, are you or any of your employees ever going to make a pass at my beautiful 16-year-old daughter? Of course not. No one has ever verbally asked you any of these questions. At least I hope not. But don't you think that your customers, especially your first-time clients, are silently asking you these questions? Absolutely. I guarantee you that your customers are always non-verbally asking themselves these negative questions about you, your employees, and your company. So our question now is, how can we answer these silent customer questions that are fueled by the dread, the doubt, and the fear in your customers' hearts? Now, of course, the easy answer is to just say, answer it, silly. Just look the customer in the eye and tell them the truth. Well, that sounds good, doesn't it? But how effective do you think it would be if right after you've met a new potential client, you said, let me assure you, Mr. Jones, I know what I'm doing. Or what about if you looked Mr. Jones in the eye and stated, I'm here to tell you I won't lie and cheat you. Oh, and I almost forgot, none of my people will make a pass at your temptingly beautiful 16-year-old daughter. What's Mr. Jones going to think? Well, the first thing he's going to think is, I better lock up my daughter. And then he'll say to himself, this guy is nuts. And who wants a nut working in their house? I'd better head back to the Yellow Pages and find another company. So we're faced with a seemingly unsolvable problem here. On the one hand, we've established that all of our customers, especially the first time our company works for them before they become cheerleaders, are definitely asking these unspoken questions. On the other hand, we've proved it would be insane to march up to a customer and verbally start replying to these sensitive questions in the customer's mind. What's the answer? It's really very simple. We answer the customer's unspoken questions with our own unspoken answers. What sort of unspoken answers? Well, we answer by the way we and our employees move, the way we present ourselves, our appearance, our speech, how we communicate to the customer. Even our attitude sends a powerful, unspoken answer. And the way we consistently send these unspoken answers to our customer through our employees is by building service systems. Do you see now why I stated in the first part of this message that we build service systems around providing answers to our customers' unspoken questions? It's easy to think of just one service system in our company, but actually each employee or each step on the service circle should have its own service system, and each service system should have carefully plotted out positive moments of truth strung along it like beads on a necklace. To visually help you with this concept, turn please to the training graphic marked Developing the Service System, with the subheading Typical Service Circle with Service Systems in Place. This may be the most important visual illustration of your entire service engineering course, because here is where you really get the vision and the big picture. We've learned that most of the ballyhooed customer service stories out there were really where some heroic employee made supreme efforts to save his company from a service breakdown that never should have happened in the first place. In other words, this company was depending upon individual initiative. Now, I would never put down an employee giving his job his all. That's wonderful. But that's not much to base the future of a business on. If we have these routine service systems in place, and our employees are focused on handing off the customer properly from one system to the next system, we won't be dependent on one employee always bailing us out. So where does the handoff occur in this graphic? When the customer is passed from one service system to the next. Visualize with me each of these small circles spinning in a fixed pattern, placed along this big circle. The customer enters your service circle when they first contact you as a prospect, unsure if they even want you to do the job. But immediately, they find themselves in your first service system, encountering one positive moment of truth after another. And amazingly, your prospect likes it. Even if this potential client realizes that he's walking along a pre-planned path for him, you know what? He doesn't mind. In fact, usually your customer is flattered that you cared enough to go to all this work just for him. And he knows that any company that is this concerned about the experience of its customers just has to have its act together and will probably do a great job on his home. So let's get hands-on with this illustration and actually consider some sample service systems on this chart and moments of truth that we can program into them. Now, the first direct moment of truth your prospect likely will have with your company is probably their initial phone call. And it's obvious how important this phone call is, yet how much effort do managers spend developing a system and giving their employees the background necessary to give the customer positive moments of truth on that first phone call? So let's consider a few moments of truth that you can program in to your first service system, marked number 1 on your chart. First of all, are your office workers aware of the importance of the phone ringing? Have you ever been in an office when some overworked secretary has thrown up her hands and moaned, How am I ever going to get any work done around here if that darn phone keeps ringing? Well, see, obviously, this poor person needs two things. First, she probably needs some help in the office. But second, more importantly, this secretary needs an attitude readjustment toward her phone ringing. And speaking of attitude, did you know that you can hear a smile over the phone? You really can. And when your customer hears your secretary or office manager smile over the phone, it's a wonderful moment of truth. So here's a concrete action to implement in your service system. Number 1, the phone call. Go out and buy some small, inexpensive wall mirrors, and then have a quick sign shop print up self-adhesive vinyl letters for each mirror that read, "What you see is what the customer hears." And then one of your first steps in your service system should read, "Look in the mirror, smile at yourself, shake out your tension, and relax." Now, if your current office personnel looked in this mirror and then followed this one little step each time when the phone rang, do you think your phone contacts would improve? I think they would. And service systems don't just focus on creating positive moments of truth. They also anticipate and help us avoid negative moments of truth. Now, here's a few ideas to use to help you avoid negative moments of truth in your service system. Number 1, when you pick up the phone, focus on the work at hand. This phone call is important. Don't keep working at your computer or even, of course, even worse, talk as you pick up the phone. Number 2, be very aware of background noise in your office. You're used to it. Your caller isn't. It's a very negative moment of truth for your customer to hear the loud, boisterous laughter of your employees or some rock station playing as she tries to conduct business with you on the phone. Number 3, have your tools close at hand. Isn't it an irritating moment of truth for you when you call a business and ask to leave a message, and the phone person says, just a minute, I have to find a pencil somewhere, and let's see, there's a scrap of paper somewhere, hang on. Well, give me a break. Did we catch this person in the toilet? Is this a business or isn't it? Number 4, don't use the P word. You see, on the phone, it's extra important that we use words that are easy on our clients' ears. And it's always a negative moment of truth for your customer to hear the P word, problem. As in, what's your problem, Mrs. Jones? Now, do you see how all 4 of these points are focused on avoiding putting the customer under any unnecessary stress? Now, even if your phone person did all 4 of these things wrong, even if they answered the phone while they're typing and talking, along with the radio blaring in the background, and they can't find a paper and a pencil, and they say, "So what's your problem, ma'am?" Well, even if they did all 4 of these things wrong, I'm still not going to tell you that your prospective client will hang up in disgust. They probably won't. But how has your entire service circle started out? Remember how we said it takes 12 positive moments of truth to make up for one negative moment of truth? Now, if your phone service system here already has 4 strikes, or even 1 strike against it, I'd say you're in trouble. After all, you're still in the very first part of the service circle. It's just terrible to get behind the 8 ball so early in the game. Now, a full discussion of telephone procedures is outside the scope of this course. But let me mention one thing that I feel is so important no matter what type of work you do on the home front. What's the number 1 question 90% of your first-time phone callers open their call with? You're right. How much do you charge? Now, why do you think your prospective customers ask that? Now, the easy, logical answer is that they're very, very worried about how much you're going to charge them. But you see, that's the answer we give before we put on our customers' eyeglasses. When we do that, we sense and feel the customer's fear, their indecision, their loss of control. And when your customer encounters your first service system, the telephone, they desperately want to keep a sense of control. And what's the easiest thing, maybe even the only thing that the customer feels qualified to ask you about? Money. How much? How much are you going to charge me? Now, am I saying that a fair price isn't important? Of course not. Everybody wants a good deal, and a fair price is part of a good deal. But your customer also knows deep down in their heart that a good deal is much more than just dirt cheap pricing. They just don't know how to ask you this. Think about it. Does your customer have the technical knowledge to ask you difficult questions about the different processes you're going to do in their home? Of course not. That's why they're calling you. Now, you see, if your customer calls and wants a price, you probably don't want to just give it to them and blurt it out. Because what are they going to do? They're going to say thank you very much and go ahead and call your competitor. But on the other hand, what can you say when they ask you how much? Would you say something like, "I'm sorry, we don't give out our prices over the phone"? Well, that's just like saying, "Sorry, ma'am, our prices are a company secret." And next thing you know, some Homefront company will be replying, "Sir, if you have to ask us how much we charge, I don't believe you can afford our services." Now, I suppose there are some areas of the country, like Beverly Hills or Aspen, Colorado, where such a pretentious, snobbish reply would work. But I wouldn't recommend you try it in your area. So how can you develop a telephone service system that gently guides the customer to the conclusion that it's logical for an estimator or an inspector to come out to his home and inspect the job the first time? Well, it's simple when we have a system. The phone rings, you answer, and the customer basically says, as they always do, "How much?" A moment of truth is here. You don't argue with them, refuse them, or even evade the question. Instead, you say, "I can help you with that. May I ask you a few questions?" Now, isn't that a reasonable reply on your part? Who could refuse such a polite, normal request? Now you can qualify the customer by asking them if you've worked for them before. Do they live in your service area? And an essential question in this service system, do you have any special areas of concern? And then it's quite easy to build on what the customer has told you, and you say, "Well, given the special concerns you've mentioned, I think it would be good for our inspector to examine your situation. He'll test your home, give you some options to choose from, and of course, he'll give you a complete written estimate. The inspection is free, and it'll take about 20 minutes. I can have him stop by tomorrow afternoon about 3 o'clock. Would that be okay?" Now, honestly, isn't this service system more proactive than panicking or getting defensive every time a customer asks your phone person how much? So are you with me now on the advantages of having a system? Now refer back to your training graphic marked Developing the Service System. By anticipating and planning moments of truth in this phone call, you're ready to hand your potential client off to the next service system marked number 2. What's your service system number 2? I don't know. It's your company. What I'm doing here is giving you a concept to use as a tool to structure your company. But likely your second system will be sending out an estimator to inspect the work and close the sale. Now, put on your customer eyeglasses and see how many positive moments of truth you can build into your inspection system. And of course, sooner or later, we've got to do some work at this house. Now, do you think it would help to have a service system to guide your employees in their relationship with this homeowner as they do the job? I think so. And please, get out your training graphic marked Typical Service System in Customer's Home. Now, this service system is deliberately not specific to your trade. But if you've stayed with me this long, I'm sure you're tuned into the idea that it matters more, much more, the manner we do things in customers' homes than the actual work we do. Now, as we cover some of these pre-planned moments of truth, notice how the entire system is designed around the feelings, the emotions of the customer. This typical service system we're going to go through truly is a script to a stage play that has but one theme: answering the customer's unspoken questions with unspoken answers. Now, if you've ever been part of a theater production, you know that the star doesn't show up 10 seconds before the opening act and run out onto the stage in his street clothes. But instead, he arrives early. He puts on his makeup and his costume. And most importantly, he psychs himself up and focuses on the job ahead, being the star in this stage play. Now, have we explained this idea of composing themselves and focusing on the customer before our employees ring the doorbell? Look at all the negative moments of truth we can avoid if our people follow the steps listed in the before stage ritual noted on your sheet. Now, like all great plays, our customer service system play is divided into 3 acts. Put your script, this typical service system, in front of you, and let's walk through these moments of truth step by step. And every time I mention an employee action that will create yet another pre-planned moment of truth for the customer, this tone will sound. Let's first of all look at Act 1, Scene 1, Introduction. Notice the first point. Get out of your truck promptly. You see, the stage play begins when the truck comes in view of the customer's home. All too often, workers leisurely sit in their truck after they've pulled into the customer's driveway, and they finish a cigarette or listen to the rest of the song playing on the stereo. Now, that's a negative moment of truth for the homeowner, because what's the homeowner doing? They're sitting in their house, peeling back the curtains, and looking at our employees sitting in their driveway. Now you say, my people would never do that. Are you sure? Do you have a system in writing to tell them not to? Look at point B. Ring the bell and stand back 3 feet. This particular procedure is built around the concept of personal space. And that basically means that any of us feel threatened if someone stands too close to us. Now, how do you think the customer feels? They're already worried, apprehensive. They answer the door, and 6 inches away, or maybe 1 foot away, you've got a couple of employees looming over them. Well, obviously, it makes them feel more threatened. And maybe you say, my people would never do that. Are you sure? Point C. Have clipboard and business card in left hand. Well, now see, professionals use business cards. Do all of your employees have their own business cards? It's a very positive moment of truth. And then look at point D. Remember, we have about 30 seconds where the customer subconsciously either says, I like this person, or I don't. So let's walk through this and look at the moments of truth. Point D. Smile at the customer. Look the customer in their eyes. Introduce yourself and shake hands. Now maybe you say, we do this anyway. All my people do this. Don't be too sure. Instead, look at the positive moments of truth when we say, good morning, Mr. Jones. I'm Steve Toburin with A&B Services. This is my coworker, Bill Smith. And then I give the customer my business card. Don't assume that your people do this. They may not. But now, let's move to Act 1, Scene 2. And this is our icebreaker scene. Now, certainly at this point, after the introduction, it would be more efficient for your employee to shoulder the customer out of the way and say, move out of the way, Mr. Jones, we've got work to do. Well, there's an old saying, pay me now or pay me later. And it very much applies at this point in our service system. So look at point A. If appropriate, introduce yourself to the children that are there, or even to the dogs. You know, I've got a funny thing to tell you. People feel like their dogs are wonderful judges of human character. I can't tell you how many dogs in my Homefront career I've introduced myself to and shaken hands with. And you know what? Every time I did it, I created a wonderful moment of truth. Now look at point B. Make a nice comment about the customer's house, their yard, their neighborhood, or the neighbors you've worked for. What are you doing? You're finding common ground with this customer. Point C. Refer to the clipboard and say, I see we're here to work on this particular point. Well, what are you really doing? Tactfully, you're saying, it's time now to get to work. Will you let me in, please? Now, I'd like you to continue to work on this service system because remember, we never stop tuning up the hot rod. Take your pen and put point D right underneath refer to clipboard. And in this point, I want you to put down carefully, very carefully and obviously, wipe your feet. Now you see, remember that we build this around customers' unspoken questions. Well, what's one burning question in the customer's mind? Are these people going to track mud and dirt and debris into my home? Now we can say, Mrs. Jones, let me assure you I'm not going to track mud into your home. Or we can very carefully wipe our feet. Or what about carrying up your own doormat to the customer's door and rolling it out and wiping your feet on it before you step in? Or for your inspectors, why not have them take off their shoes before they walk into the customer's home? Can you see the powerful moments of truth this consistently makes? Let's go on to Act 2, Scene 1, Customer Interview. And here, we're going to find out what the customer views as important. Our main goal is listed on point A, to show an attitude of care and concern. How do we do this? Point B. First question. Would you show me any areas of special concern as you walk me through the job? Now, what do you think? Do you think your customer's heart beats a little faster here? Do you think this was a positive moment of truth? Of course it was. And then what do? Well, point C, we ask supplemental questions to get a clear view of the customer's baseline expectations. How can we possibly hope to exceed the expectations of the customer and make a cheerleader if we don't even know what they are? So now, this is why we're interviewing the customer. And when they give us the answers, what do? Point D, take immediate action based on the customer's answers. What's the easiest way to do this? Write it down. Make notes on the work order. It's incredibly flattering to your customer to give you answers and then have the answers written down. Point E, give the customer control. How do we do this? Ask the second essential question. Where would you like me to start? Now, do you know what 99.9% of your customers are going to say back to you? Well, start anywhere you want. You're the doctor, you decide. But most importantly, you've given the customer control in their own home. Another essential point of giving the customer control is listed in point F. Always ask permission to do anything in the customer's home. If you're going to move their furniture, ask them if you can do it. If you're going to use the telephone, ask them if you can. And of course, the only thing that you never, ever ask to do in the customer's home, you never ask them if you can smoke. Now then, Act 2, Scene 2, our demonstration scene. Because you see, sooner or later, we need to do some work here. But even so, during the production of this work, we're going to focus on making positive moments of truth for the customer. Well, we first of all go in and set up our tools and our equipment, but then we start on the work, and if possible, we make a cosmetic contrast between the old work and the new work. If we're painting the wall, we paint half of the wall and then ask the customer to look at it. If we're washing a window, we wash half of it and ask the customer to look. If we're putting shingles on the roof, we shingle part of it and say, would you like to inspect the job? What are we doing? We're giving the customer the illusion of control. And more importantly, remember, the customer has had many of their unspoken questions answered already in this service system, but they still have that one question left in their mind. Do these people know what they're doing? Well, when you demonstrate to them what you've done and how you've done it, you're answering this unspoken question with an unspoken answer. Also, another thing that we need to do is listed in point D. Use this time to explain your procedures to the customer. Why? Because you're going to help the customer understand what a good job is. This is a unique opportunity that we have in the service business. Remember that when the customer buys any service, they find it very high stress and unpleasant. Why? Because they don't know how to determine a good job. Well, if we explain our procedures to them, we're giving them the definition of how to determine a good job. Isn't that a great opportunity? With this system in place, your employees will always take advantage of it. But now, Act 3, Scene 1, Post-Inspection. Now, remember that we always want to show the customer care and concern. How do we do it? Well, we say, Mr. Jones, I'd like to review with you what I've done. What are you telling the customer? You're saying, this work is important to me. And incidentally, point B, well, you're showing them any potential problems and explaining why it won't be 100%. In other words, we're covering our rear. And also, in point C, point out with concern any pre-existing damage that you've noticed in the customer's home. There's an old saying on the Homefront. If you notice the problem and point it out to the customer before they point it out to you, it's their problem. But on the other hand, if you don't show it to the customer and they have to discover it and point it out to you, it's our problem. So always show the customer the pre-existing damage in a polite, concerned manner, and it will be a wonderful moment of truth. And finally, Act 3, Scene 2, Thank you. This is our thank you scene. This is our conclusion. And let me ask you, do your employees have a system to ask to be paid by the client? Or are they saying, I need to be paid now? Now, you might say, of course not. But are you sure? Instead, point A, ask, Mr. Jones, do you have a check number I can write on your invoice? Do you see how much nicer that is? How much less stressful it is for the customer? Point B, remember, once we've received our check, we don't want to just cut and run. No, instead, we want to spend a few minutes to function as a consultant. What are we going to do? Give the customer tips on maintaining what you've worked on. What are you really saying? You're sending the unspoken answer that I care about you even after I have your check in my pocket. And finally, do we have a script for our employees to say goodbye to the customer? Mr. Jones, I've enjoyed meeting you. We appreciate your business. Goodbye. So there you have it, a sample service system for your frontline workers in the customer's home. Of course, this one service system is just part of your service engineering circle. You'll see more service systems illustrated after it. You'll want to institute a customer aftercare service system, for example, to help your client through their buyer's remorse and to show you still care even after you have their money. So you might institute a quality check call system where your office calls the customer the day after you have finished the job just to make sure everything turned out great. And the circle goes on and on. And that's just the point. Instead of working for customers once and then just hoping they call us back, we're going to view them as appreciating assets. We're going to maintain them, we're going to manage them, and we're going to care for and love our customers. And the way we do this is by having service systems that answer the customer's unspoken questions with unspoken answers